From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. People are finding new ways to use aerial vehicles, commonly called drones. An organization called DIY Drones says it has more than 40,000 members who build and fly such aircraft. Rescue teams, police, and others are developing new uses and technology for drones. But what seems like a good activity for one group may seem like a threat to another. Recently, the group People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA, made an announcement. The group said that it was negotiating with a drone manufacturer. PETA President Newkirk says often drones are considered unmanned killing machines. But she says her group believes they can also be used to save lives. The PETA website says the group would use drones to record cruelty to farm animals and illegal hunting methods. The website says this would help enforce animal protection laws. PETA's president says hunters sometimes put out food to get the attention of animals they want to shoot. However, Newkirk says it is illegal to bait animals. She says drones could be used to identify lawbreakers. Hunting and gun rights groups oppose PETA's plan to watch and record images of hunters from the sky. They say the plan would violate the privacy of gun owners and their right to enjoy the outdoors. Local and federal lawmakers were already debating the issues raised by police use of drones. Groups like the American Civil Liberties Union wanted laws to prevent law enforcement agencies from watching people. They warn that without legal restrictions, the technology could be used to spy on citizens. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. Diamonds may be a girl's best friend, as the old saying goes. But some women are finding a lot to like about colorful beads from Uganda made of recycled paper. The beads are sold by a non-profit organization in the United States called Bead for Life. Bead for Life began as a chance meeting between 3 American women on a trip to Uganda and a local jewelry maker. Millie Grace Akena was rolling paper beads near her home. She worked at a rock quarry. She made paper beads as a hobby, but there was no real market for them in her country. Torkin Wakefield says she, her daughter Devin Hibbard, and Ginny Jordan brought some of the beads back to the United States. Ms. Wakefield said people liked the beads and asked her where she got them. The 3 Americans launched Bead for Life in 2004. Nearly 700 women have taken part. The group says its beaders earn an average of more than $2,000 a year in the program. This is 5 times what they earned before. Torkin Wakefield says the women spend up to 18 months in the program. She says during that time, the women make their regular income and have savings accounts. They begin to plan for launching a business which will continue after they graduate from Bead for Life. Many of the beaders go on to open businesses like restaurants, beauty salons, and clothing stores. The beads are sold across Uganda and at the Bead for Life headquarters in Boulder, Colorado. They are also sold online and at jewelry shows called bead parties. Torkin Wakefield says people who buy the beads feel a direct connection that they are helping to reduce poverty. Acrylic plastic is used to harden the paper. The jewelry costs between $5 and $30. Bead for Life reported sales in its last budget year of more than $3.5 million. It says for every $10 necklace sold, the beader gets $2.43 in money or materials. It says more than 90% of earnings are reinvested in community development projects in Uganda. Torkin Wakefield estimates that Bead for Life has helped more than 8,000 people this way. So what about Millie Grace Akena, the jewelry maker? Mrs. Wakefield says she has gone on to organize a small group of women who work with her. They sell their beads to a religious group. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Kathy Hutchinson is a tetraplegic. She has not been able to move her arms, legs, or speak since suffering a stroke nearly 15 years ago. Recently, she learned how to control a robotic arm using her thoughts. She now can use brain activity to serve herself a drink. The American woman is one of 2 people who took part in a research project known as BrainGate 2. The researchers have spent years studying how to help people who are paralyzed regain movement in their arms and legs. John Donahue was part of the project. He is a neuroscientist with Brown University and the Department of Veterans Affairs. He says people who are paralyzed have their brain disconnected from their body. So he and other researchers decided to go around the damaged nervous system. They developed a way to go directly from the brain to the outside world. The 2 paralyzed people had small sensors connected to the part of the brain that controls movement. The devices measured brain activity and sent that information to a computer. The computer has special software that turns the information into digital commands for operating other devices. The researchers used a highly developed robotic arm to recreate human actions. Scientists from Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard Medical School, and the German Aerospace Center also took part in the study. The BrainGate team had its first success in 2006. A tetraplegic stabbing victim was able to use the brain-computer interface system to control a computer cursor. John Donahue says the latest development using robotic arms is a major victory. A video of the experiment shows Kathy Hutchinson using such an arm to pick up a cup of coffee. She guides the cup toward her mouth, moves it forward, and drinks through a straw. The research team carried out almost 200 tests with 2 different robotic arms. The 2 individuals were able to pick up their target objects 43 to 66% of the time. The researchers are calling the information very promising. But they say it will take years to fully develop the technology for everyday use. A report on the BrainGate study appeared in the scientific journal Nature. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Persutti. To read, listen, and learn English with our stories, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. The lack of clean drinking water is a major problem worldwide. The World Health Organization says more than 1 billion people live in areas where renewable water resources are not available. The problem is especially serious in Asia and the Pacific. A United Nations report says water availability in that area is the 2nd lowest in the world after Africa. Nearly 700,000 people in Asia and the Pacific lack safe drinking water. The UN report notes that the world's poorest countries are also the ones that use the most water for agriculture. Agriculture uses about 80% of the water in the Asia-Pacific area. There has also been an increase in water used for industry. China and India more than tripled their industrial water use between 1992 and 2002. The lack of clean drinking water around the world forces millions of people to drink unsafe water. This leads to an increase in diseases like diarrhea, the 2nd leading cause of death in children under 5. Floods, droughts, pollution, and climate change have created even more problems. The Millennium Development Goals for 2015 call for a 50% decrease in the number of people without safe drinking water and basic sanitation. Scientists, governments, and aid organizations around the world are increasing their efforts to meet these goals. Still, the UN says there is much work to be done. During its yearly World Water Day observance in March, it called on the international community to work together to solve the water crisis. Researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology are doing just that. The American and South Korean researchers are investigating a new technology for turning seawater into drinking water. The new technology is called ion concentration polarization. The process uses electricity to help separate electrically charged salt particles from water to make it drinkable. The researchers tested their desalination process on a computer chip the size of a postage stamp. The chip removed 99% of the salt and other harmful substances from water samples. So far, the method purifies only small amounts of water, but the researchers say it may someday be available as a personal water purification product. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. If researchers want to know what happened on a particular day, they often look at newspapers from that day. But what would happen if newspapers stopped publishing? Future researchers would likely turn to the web. The Wayback Machine at archive.org has for years archived websites, but it only does this once a day for news sites and even less often for other websites. 29-year-old reporter Ben Welsh decided to create a site similar to archive.org, but he wanted to archive only news sites, and he wanted to save their home pages more often. Ben Welsh works for the Los Angeles Times. In May, he created pastpages.org. His website saves the home pages of 70 news websites from around the world once an hour. Ben Welsh says this schedule of what he calls harvesting is important in today's quickly changing news environment. Over the course of a day, the narrative arc of a news story can develop quite a bit, he says. He says no one had ever saved the home pages of so many news sites so often and made that material available to the public. He hopes to keep adding to the site until it is archiving material from up to 300 sites. Ben Welsh spends about $60 a month on storage space for pastpages.org. He feared the cost would increase beyond what he could afford, so he asked people for help through Kickstarter. People use that website to seek money for creative projects. Within about a week, he had gotten all of the $5,000 he had asked for, and more. Ben Welsh says he will use the money to expand his website. He hopes to build some features specifically targeted to media researchers and media critics. Stephanie Bluestein was a reporter at the Los Angeles Times. She is now an assistant professor of journalism at California State University, Northridge. She believes pastpages.org will prove to be a valuable resource. Now you could look hour by hour and see the placement of the lead story, how the headline changed, and how different newspapers played the story. Now you can actually compare, she says. Professor Bluestein says news today changes so quickly, even archiving once an hour may soon not be enough. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. To learn English and get more technology news, go to voaspecialenglish.com. This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. The World Health Organization has added to the debate over the risk of brain cancer from mobile phone use. The WHO's International Agency for Research on Cancer recently listed the signals from wireless devices as possibly carcinogenic. This finding puts cell phones in the same risk group as the pesticide DDT, but also in the same group as coffee. A group of 31 scientists from 14 countries made the finding. The announcement came at the end of a meeting at the agency's headquarters in Lyon, France. The concern is that extended contact with radio frequency electromagnetic fields may increase a user's risk for glioma. Glioma is the most common form of brain cancer. The scientists spent a week examining existing research. Dr. Jonathan Samay from the University of Southern California led the group. He says the finding that there could be some risk means scientists need to keep a close watch for a link between cell phones and cancer. The statement noted that the number of mobile phone users is large and growing, especially among young adults and children. Mobile phone subscriptions are estimated at 5 billion worldwide. The scientists called for more research into long-term, heavy use of mobile phones. They also suggested taking measures to reduce exposure to the signals, like hands-free devices or texting. Camilla Reese, from an American group called Electromagnetic Health, praised the report but says wider research is needed. She says, "We've only had this technology around for about 15 years, and most carcinogens will take 30 to 40 years to develop a cancer." She says some scientists believe there could be a tsunami of brain cancer unless we do something to educate people to lower their exposure to this kind of risk. CTIA, the International Association for the Wireless Telecommunications Industry, dismissed the report. The group pointed out that no new research had been done, and it noted that the Cancer Research Agency has given the same finding to things like coffee and pickled vegetables. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Development Report. Last week, we told you about Failfair, an event where people talk about international development projects that failed. Many of these projects started as good ideas. Others had some level of success, but not enough to have a measurable effect on the lives of people in developing countries. A nonprofit group in New York City called Mobile Active held the first Failfair earlier this year. Mobile Active is made up of people and organizations that use technology to try to improve the lives of the poor. Katrine Verklaas came up with the idea for Failfair as a way to help nonprofit groups improve by learning from the mistakes of others. She says the primary goal is to learn from failure and not to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. Katrine Verklaas says there are many reasons why projects fail, but one reason tops all others. She says development projects are not one size fits all. Yet, many people try to import ideas as if they were. What they fail to consider, she says, is the desires of the local people or their cultural, economic, and political differences. She says the problem for many non-governmental organizations and other groups is simply not knowing their audience. The creator of Failfair says this is true not only with technology, but other projects as well. Ms. Verklaas hopes nonprofits in other industries and fields will create their own versions of Failfair. A second Failfair took place in July in Washington. The World Bank Institute co-sponsored the event. To Katrine Verclaes, it was a good sign to have the World Bank support such open discussions about failure. She says it is not just about products. It is about people's lives and well-being and livelihoods in many developing countries. So it is important to be very honest about what projects are not performing according to expectations. An award for the best worst failure story went to Michael Trucano from the World Bank Institute. What he presented was in fact a list. It was a list of what he considers the worst practices in the use of information and communication technologies in education. Mr. Trucano gets to keep the award until the next Failfair, which is expected to be held on the West Coast this fall. You can find a link to his list of the top 10 worst practices at voaspecialenglish.com. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is Technology. 23-year-old Rio Savianto sells face masks for about 30 cents each in central Jakarta, Indonesia. He earns enough money to own a cell phone that permits him to visit websites like Facebook and Twitter, as well as finding game applications or apps. Rio Savianto says the average person in Indonesia has a cell phone. He likes having one because he can talk to his family when he is away from home. And he is pleased that he can use it to listen to music. Rio's phone has a keypad that makes it look like a BlackBerry. It is known as a feature phone or smartphone light. That is because it is less costly and cannot do as many things as more advanced phones like the Apple iPhone. These devices make up the majority of cell phones sold around the world. They are successful in places like Indonesia, where some smartphones cost $700 or more. Although many lower-income users are new to smartphones, they are quickly learning to use the technology. Phone manufacturer Nokia offers a service called Life Tools. For a monthly payment, Nokia sends text messages to farmers. They tell about weather conditions, crop prices, agricultural news, and give advice. Local businessman Aldi Hirio Protomo has developed a way for store owners to sell things from prepaid cell phone minutes to life insurance through text messages. A company called Ruma developed the technology. It is working on a system that will inform people about jobs in their area. Last year, the French company Semiocast reported that Jakarta was the world's top tweeting city, ahead of Tokyo and London. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. Delegates from around the world recently agreed on a new treaty on telecommunications and the Internet. The agreement came at the World Conference on International Telecommunications in Dubai. But the United States and more than 50 other countries have refused to sign the treaty. They are calling it a threat to Internet freedom. This was the first time that the international telecommunication regulations have been amended in more than 20 years. Back then, the Internet as we know it did not exist. Delegates at the conference in Dubai were divided over how the Internet should be governed. Countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, China, and Iran are concerned that the Internet's naming system is governed by a non-profit group which operates from the United States. That organization is called ICANN, the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. The discussions at the conference took place during 2 weeks of tense and sometimes heated debate among the delegates. Officials reported receiving more than 1,200 proposals from members of the International Telecommunication Union. The group's Secretary General, Hamadoun Touré, called the signing of the treaty a momentous occasion. He also expressed regret that some governments chose not to sign the agreement. Hamadoun Touré said he hoped the ITU would continue to work with those countries. Some observers say division over the treaty remains so strong that it is unlikely to go into effect in 2015 as planned. They say changes may be necessary to get wider agreement among delegates. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Development Report. The World Bank says most developing countries have made important progress toward the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. In April, the international lender released its yearly World Development Indicators. Hundreds of indicators are used to measure progress in areas such as education, health, poverty, the environment, and trade. One of the Millennium Development Goals is to reduce by half the number of people living in extreme poverty by 2015. Out of 87 countries with data available, 49 seem likely to reach that goal. Extreme poverty is defined as earning less than $1 a day. Another goal is to make education available to all young children. The report shows that in 2007, 7 out of 10 children lived in developing countries that had met or were close to meeting that goal. Also, 39 countries have achieved or are likely to achieve the goal of reducing child death rates. The target is a 2/3 reduction by 2015. And the report from the World Bank shows the first reduction in AIDS-related deaths. But even with all the progress, there is still a long way to go to reach all 8 goals approved by world leaders 10 years ago. This is especially true in sub-Saharan Africa, which falls behind on all of the goals. Eric Swanson is a program manager for the World Development Indicators. He said there was a decade or more of very slow economic progress in the 1990s in Africa. There were civil wars and other disruptions. And there was poor governance in many countries that has not permitted the economy to grow and has not allowed poor people to share in the benefits of growth. Still, he points to some hopeful signs, including a large reduction in the child death rate in Malawi. The World Bank also launched a new open data initiative. The bank will make its data on living conditions around the world publicly available. Officials say this will make it easier to measure the effects of policies and develop new solutions to help the world's poor. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report. You can comment on our programs and learn about other development issues at voaspecialenglish.com. You can find transcripts, MP3s, and podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and iTunes at VOA Learning English.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Name a website where you could find old pictures of camels carrying people to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and books about ancient Aztecs in Mexico. It is all found in the World Digital Library. Its collection is available on the internet. The library has 8,000 items, from whole books to ancient writings to music and photographs. There are 170 partners in 79 countries sending material to the World Digital Library. Partners include national or university libraries, museums, and other cultural organizations. The librarian of the United States Congress, James Billington, launched the WDL in 2009. John Van Oudenaren is the director of the library. He says Mr. Billington wanted it to include materials that are both interesting and important. Every item is explained in the 6 official languages of the United Nations: English, Arabic, French, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, and also Portuguese. Since 2009, 25 million people have visited the website from 250 places. The greatest number is from Spanish-speaking countries. John Van Oudenaren says users include schools, researchers, and anyone interested. He was especially happy to hear from one teacher in New York City. She said it was wonderful to have a website where people around the world could find interesting and important items. Musa Marawe is a researcher for the WDL from Sudan. He works with all the materials that are in Arabic. Musa Marawe believes the library provides tools for understanding, especially among Arabs, Muslims, and the United States. Anyone may search the World Digital Library by subject, time period, kind of document, or area of the world. The website is www.wdl.org. For VOA Learning English,
I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. The iPhone has become one of the most popular mobile phones in the United States. An 18-year-old student in California has used his knowledge of the iPhone to create his own business. And he has gained national recognition for his work. Vincent Quigg is the Chief Executive Officer of Tech World. His company is like a hospital for iPhones. Vincent launched Tech World while he was in high school. He says his mother became single at the time, and he needed to find ways to make money. So he found ways to be entrepreneurial. An organization called the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, or NIFTY, helped the young man get started. Both he and his mother, Carla, admit that he had a hard time developing a business plan. The first time Vincent attended a NIFTY class, he quit. At the same time, he worked for the electronics store Best Buy. He says people always came into the store with broken electronic devices. He decided that repairing those devices was what he wanted to do. He not only re-registered for the NIFTY class, but he also won the organization's national competition for Best Young Entrepreneur. Estelle Reyes is Executive Director for NIFTY in Los Angeles. She says Vincent has an incredible gift for presenting himself and his dreams in a very compelling way that engages everyone to rally around him. His business has grown through word of mouth. Vincent says he now fixes up to 10 phones per week. He earns about $1,500 each month in sales. Tech World has 2 employees, and Vincent says he wants to continue to grow his business. His biggest goal, he says, has always been to work for himself. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.